Well, hello and good afternoon, parents. Happy October to you, as today is the first day of October. It is Wednesday, October the 1st, and today we've got our questions and our usual conversation starters for our sermon tonight. As you know, last week we wrapped up in the book of Ephesians, and this week we start in the book of James. Very, very excited about James, a very practical book. It's sort of all about how to live as a Christian. So with that being said, tonight we're going through the first four verses, James 1 through 4. You're going to get an introduction from who James is and the very first principle that he's going to speak about in this book, which is chock full of principle for living. So with that being said, here's our three questions. Some of them are more technical, some of them are more spiritual, and we'll get into those questions and answers now for you. The first one is this: who do we think wrote the book of James? Who do we think wrote the book of James? There's traditionally been argument over this throughout history about whether or not it was James, the brother of John, who was martyred in Acts chapter 12, or James, the half-brother of Jesus, or later on in critical scholarship when they argued that it may have been somebody altogether not a James who wrote it under a pseudonym. I'm going to argue tonight for the position that this book was written by James, the half-brother of Jesus. That's what church history tells us to be the case, and it's a really interesting case to hear from him, as he would have been the first bishop of Jerusalem, and he would have not been a believer in Jesus during his earthly ministry, but after his resurrection. Question number 2, what kind of book or what genre is the book of James? What kind of book or what genre is the book of James? We know that we encounter a number of literary genres throughout the Bible, things like Genesis, which you could call historical narrative, the Gospel of Matthew, that would be a gospel narrative. You have epistles, which are letters from one person to another or to a place or something like that. And there's some toss-up on this, but one of the things that myself and the other pastors have discussed, and I think is a serious conversation to be had, is that James reads like wisdom literature. Like wisdom literature. Think of it like a Proverbs of the New Testament. James is really expecting his readers to already have some theology under their belt, to already understand basic things like the doctrine of who God is and who Jesus Christ is, and he wants to tell them how they need to live wisely. So it really is like a New Testament wisdom literature, like a Proverbs of the New Testament. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Thirdly and lastly, and this one gets into sort of the spiritual nature of the text tonight, why can we as Christians count it all as joy when we face trials of many kinds? That's the first thing that James is going to tell us tonight in the text is, count it all as joy, brothers, when you face trials of various kinds. And that's a hard command, but the reason that we can do so is what he goes on to say next in the text, that those trials produce in us steadfastness or endurance, and that endurance has a full effect in us, which is causing us to know Christ, causing us to love Christ, and causing us to grow in Christ, to become more like him, that in his suffering we are transformed into his image, and that suffering shows us that our faith is true and is real. So I'm very excited to hear from you tonight in parent meeting. I've got some information for you about new procedures and policies that we've got in place for volunteering and those sort of things. If you've got family worship stories after last month's meeting, I would love to hear that. We'd love to celebrate those things with you. If you got prayer requests, whatever, bring all of that, and I can't wait to see you after our service this evening. Love y'all. Be good.